Elden Ring is one of my favorite games of all time, as it is for many. The combat is among the best in gaming, the atmosphere and lore are engaging all the way through, and the vast assortment of weapons and playstyles make the game extremely replayable. I wanted to make a video about this game, and I thought a fun idea would be making a death battle matchup for all the Remembrance bosses. It was not. Outside of the main cast, most of these guys have next to no lore or story to use, meaning that most of these matchups are just really bad. There's only a handful of characters that have enough story for an actual episode, but damn it, I put hours into this before realizing it was a mistake, so we're doing it anyway. There are 25 Remembrance bosses in the game with the DLC, but I decided to make things more interesting by adding a few notable characters that aren't bosses. That way only about half of these matchups are terrible and not all of them. I couldn't do this without some help, so joining me today is a bunch of random people from Reddit who made some cool thumbnails and listed connections for characters I'm not familiar with. I'll be putting the names of the Reddit accounts on screen, but the links to the original posts will be in the description as well for those who want to check them out. We're going to be starting with the best matchups made by other people and work our way towards the bad ones I made, since I don't want to scare people off too fast with some of my horrific ideas. One more thing before we begin. I could have made this way easier on myself by using characters from other FromSoft games, but I decided against it. That's a little too easy, and the only one I played aside from Elden Ring is the Demon Souls remake anyway. Aside from the obvious spoiler warning for every boss in Elden Ring, I think that's everything. Here we go. The first matchup is easily the best one I'll be talking about today. Link from The Legend of Zelda versus the Tarnished. I know some people really don't like this idea, but there was a cast episode about it, and it's probably the best option for the Tarnished that isn't another FromSoft character. I could make an entire video about this matchup, and I probably will, so I'm going to move on for now. Go watch the Death Battle cast if you want to learn about it. There's 29 other matchups I have to get through. Malenia vs Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. This is my second favorite idea in this video that I didn't come up with myself. At a surface level, they're both super tough bosses that evolve into gods during their battle. Both have incredibly long swords and long flowing hair, and they're extremely stoic and believe themselves to be superior to those around them. This is already pretty neat, but there's way more to it when you start looking at the lore. Both were the greatest soldiers in their worlds at one point, with armies that genuinely respected them. They were cursed in the womb by an eldritch entity and eventually used that curse against their opponents as a last resort, the Scarlet Rat for Malenia and Genova for Sephiroth. They also each have a notorious blade spam move with Waterfall Dance for Malenia and Ogdeslash for Sephiroth. There's more to it, I'm sure, but I haven't played Final Fantasy VII, and the only experience I have with Sephiroth is in Smash, so I'll leave it there. Sephiroth probably wins, but Elden Ring scaling is really weird, so I could totally see someone pushing back on that verdict depending on what they buy. All I know is that this fight could be one of the most visually stunning in the history of the show. I can imagine Malenia's rot slowly taking over the battlefield as they duel, and their fighting styles would clash extremely well. They would also probably hate each other, which is always a plus when we're talking about a death battle. Considering Malenia was pushed so heavily in the marketing, she's likely one of the few characters that has a shot at getting an episode, and bringing Sephiroth back would be a great way to do it in my opinion. Now on to a matchup for her brother. Miquella vs Makima from Chainsaw Man. When I first saw the thumbnail, I laughed and thought to myself, what the hell do they have in common? Then I started thinking a little bit and realized how damn perfect this is. I wanted to start with characters that actually had a chance of getting in the show, and Miquella is definitely not one of them, but I'm just in love with this dynamic. I'm actually just going to read the core theme that the original poster wrote since it's absolutely perfect. Two supernatural beings, powerful not for their physical might, but their clever planning and power to control the hearts of others. Both seek to create their perfect world, free from suffering and malice, yet go about it by manipulating those around them like puppets, and both command armies of people who they have under their control. It's genuinely fantastic, and probably my most wanted episode that has zero chance of happening. I've never seen Chainsaw Man, but I know a fair bit about her from the episode, which is great by the way, and she's quickly become one of my favorite anime villains. That being said, I've never watched an anime all the way through, so maybe that's not the highest praise, but she's still a really great, and I'd love to see her bounce off a literal god. Her whole deal is that she has to feel superior to her opponent, and she's going to have a hell of a time doing that when Miquella drops a literal holy nuke on her or summons a gravity-wielding super soldier. For that reason, I don't see Makima having any shot at winning this episode, but again, Elden Ring scaling is weird, so maybe someone thinks Miquella is wall level or some shit, I don't know. Miquella is probably too obscure for a full episode since he really only has a DLC to flesh out his character, but this video isn't about matchups that are going to happen, it's about matchups that lead to interesting discussions. Speaking of which, Zeus from God of War versus Radagon of the Golden Order. You kinda have to consider America and Radagon to be the same person for these connections to work, but if you do so, it's possibly the single most thematic matchup in this video. They are chief deities in their worlds that reside over the most holy and important locations, Mount Olympus and the Erdtree. Both initially aided a greater deity before turning on them, Gaia and the Greater Will, and both had children that would go on to overthrow them, Kratos and the Empyreans. Both were defeated by the main playable character only to be used by another god afterwards, Athena and the Elden Beast. That is really awesome, and since America never takes physical form outside of trailers, you could totally make this a 1v1 without things feeling incomplete. Zeus should probably win unless you go really crazy with Elden Ring scaling, but damn, I'd love to see this episode. It's not going to happen like pretty much every other matchup here, but I can still dream. I really want to play God of War someday. It looks like an incredible series that's right up my alley. Mesmer the Impaler versus Vlad III from Fate Grand Order. Two chill and relaxed dudes with a beast living inside them that gained the title of Impaler from a war they waged in the sake of their kingdoms. Both use a long spear as their primary weapon and are extremely religious to the point that they rarely use their more bestial forms. This fight would be breathtaking, and Mesmer is another character that has a genuine shot of getting an actual episode due to his role in the DLC, albeit still a pretty small chance. I'd love to see them push themselves so far that they unleash their curses, leading to an intense and bloody finale where the loser would obviously be impaled. As for who that loser is, I'm guessing Mesmer since I don't know much about Vlad, and usually the character you don't know is going to stomp the one you do. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. I don't have any knowledge on Fate, so there's not much I can add, but this fight just has the perfect vibes for a really intense and dramatic death battle. Mohg, Lord of Blood versus Vladimir the Crimson Reaper from League of Legends. Blood magic princes who were shunned by their family and started a blood cult to reshape the world. According to the Reddit post, Vladimir stomps, and we're starting to get into characters that probably don't need to get an episode, but those connections are pretty damn specific compared to most of the matchups we're looking at today. The banter potential is really good since both of them think they're hot shit, and Mohg is one of the most visually stunning fights in the game, so I'd love to see how Death Battle would animate his blood flame magic. Again, I don't think characters like Mohg really need an episode, but if we're coming up with a matchup for every Remembrance, this is inevitable, and I'm not going to bother bringing it up again. Also, this thumbnail was apparently made by Top Hat Potato 75, and they did a great job, so I wanted to give the proper credit. I've been trying to pronounce this name for quite a while now without sounding like a racist asshole, so I'm just going to put the correct pronunciation on screen and then just refer to them as they for the rest of this section.
Qing Shi Huang.
From Record of Ragnarok versus Morgoth the Omen King. I've never seen or even heard of Record of Ragnarok until today, but after doing some research into the series, it seems like a perfect parallel to Elden Ring. To be brief, it's about the gods deciding to wipe out humanity because they suck, which is very understandable, but man sets up a tournament as a last resort to prove their worth. That fits Elden Ring's themes of corrupt power and god-slaying very well, and this matchup specifically seems really neat. Both adamantly defend their kingdoms despite being shunned by them and fight with a large assortment of weapons for both long and close-ranged combat. They also contrast in that he is known as the king where it all began, and Morgoth is known as the last of all kings, and Morgoth's scornful and disrespectful personality would bounce off their more upbeat energy quite well. I'm going to assume they win since I don't know them, but I'd definitely be rooting for Morgoth since he's easily one of the coolest characters in Elden Ring. He's also one of the most deserving to get on the show due to his role in the story, so maybe he has a chance? I highly doubt it, but it's certainly more likely than the next matchup. Death from Puss in Boots, The Last Wish versus Malekith the Black Blade. This is easily one of the coolest ideas here. The most feared characters in their stories who represent the concept of death. They have a canine-like appearance and were initially mistaken for much less threatening forms, a bounty hunter and the beast clergyman, only to be eventually bested by an up-and-coming hero that continues to revive themselves, Puss in Boots and the Tarnished. I love everything to do with Malekith and Elden Ring. His design, arena, lore, and overall boss fight are among the best in the game, and Death seems like a fantastic opponent for him. I really want to watch the Puss in Boots films since I've seen every Shrek movie but haven't gotten around to them yet. They seem really cool and Death seemed like an awesome villain, so I don't have too many arguments against this one. According to the original poster, Death would take it, but it seems pretty close and I love debatable matchups like this. Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy versus... no, from God of War. These characters were once normal people that became a horrible serpent-like monster due to a lust for power. Both survived a weapon specifically designed to kill them, the Serpent Hunter and Mjolnir, and both have a burning hatred for the divine, despite partially being so themselves. It's also fire versus water, and I'm a sucker for any matchup with opposing elements. This fight would be visually stunning if done well, but even with their skills, I highly doubt the Death Battle team has the budget to pull this off effectively, let alone for a matchup this obscure. Still, as a concept, this absolutely kicks ass, but I'm gonna guess Rykard loses due to God of War scaling. Bael the Dread versus Fatalis from Monster Hunter. The strongest dragons in their series who are evil as hell, can summon lightning, and use their tails as whips constantly. Yeah, we're really starting to get into some DBX ideas now, there's not much to this one. Bael is obviously cool as shit, I mean just look at him, so any fight that has him in it is automatically going to be dope. We've never had a true dragon fight on the show, and I'd love to see one, and both series absolutely deserve to get at least one episode at some point. I don't know who wins, but I'm just gonna guess Bael because I'm tired of guessing the person that isn't from Elden Ring. Nah, maybe I should play Monster Hunter someday, I don't know. Kokushibo from Demon Slayer versus R'hllana the Twin Moon Knight. Okay, before getting into the matchup, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about R'hllana since she's seriously my favorite video game boss of all time and I really want to gush about her. There's no story or build up to her whatsoever really, and while many have understandably criticized her for that, I unapologetically love it. You go in expecting just another standard Elden Ring fight, and the beauty of the battle is that's exactly what she is. There's no crazy gimmick or bullshit moves or frustrating run back, and yet she's still one of the top 5 hardest fights in the game. She hits like a truck that gives you plenty of time for counterattacks, making her one of the most fair fights in Elden Ring. Her movement and attacks are all beautiful without sacrificing impact, and Phase 2 is the perfect addition to the moveset since it changes every attack without forcing you to learn a whole new pattern. Her signature attack is gorgeous and really fun to dodge, as is her Flame Geyser and especially her giant Glintstone Blade. That one is tricky as hell but so damn satisfying to weave through. And the music is hands down the best piece of video game music I've heard in years. Go listen to the Twin Moon Knight right now, and more people need to talk about how damn good this song is. Sorry for the rant, R'hllana just hits each and every one of my biases right on the head and I couldn't help myself. As for the matchup, both are powerful swordsmen that utilize a moon motif and have extremely powerful warrior siblings, Rennala and Yurichi? Yeah, we're gonna go with that. and both have a strong connection to a powerful villain with a curse they hate, Mesmer and Muzan. Surprisingly thematic for a character like Rolana who has so little to go on, and while it's not my favorite, this is easily the matchup that would make me pop off the hardest if it were announced for hopefully obvious reasons. I'd like to think this is pretty close based on what Death Battle said about Demon Slayer, but I have no way of knowing for sure. Battle Beast for Invincible versus Godfrey, the First Elden Lord. The original poster deleted their account and left me with 0 connections to go off of, and since I've never seen Invincible, I'm just going to guess what the connections are, and someone in the comments can make fun of me for how wrong I am. 2 powerful warriors who love fighting that take their death with pride due to finally meeting their match. They're bloody brawlers and also have a weapon they utilize sometimes. That's the best I got. Super general, really dumb. I think it'd be cool to see, and Battle Beast likely stumps. For the final matchup I didn't come up with on my own, we have Ronnie the Witch versus Edelgard von Helsing from Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is likely just a meme matchup since the only connections I could find are that they hate the church and they're hot, but damn it, this is really funny. I think Ronnie takes it easily, which is great since she doesn't engage in combat whatsoever in Elden Ring unless I'm missing something. The thumbnail looks good, and this is a pretty good transition to the matchups I came up with. Before we begin, once again, I have to preface that these are mostly all terrible because a lot of these bosses have nothing to go off of. If that wasn't bad enough, my entire YouTube channel is run by nothing but an Apple phone and a $20 mic as of now, so these thumbnails look like complete ass. If someone in the comments wants to tell me how to make a good Death Battle thumbnail, I'd really appreciate it, since I'd like to make more matchup videos in the future. Alright, here we go. Ganondorf from The Legend of Zelda versus Radahn. The connections here are super service level. Both are huge red-haired warriors with 2 giant swords that utilize purple magic, ride on a dark horse, and keep getting revived by other people. They also have more bestial forms they can access, Ganon, and I guess Star Scourge is what you call it, I don't know. If you could find a way to make Radahn transform without it feeling weird, which you may not even be able to do, this fight would go hard as hell. Just 2 badass characters with badass powers throwing attacks back and forth without too much banter or story to get in the way. Clearly an idea like this would be better as a DBX, but I love these 2, and since both series have super weird scaling, I could see it going either way, though Radahn should probably win, I think. Most people talk about their favorite matchups that could happen realistically, and rarely discuss matchups that lean into their biases. I don't know why we can't do both. There's a ton of matchups that have 0 chance of happening, like Dark Matter vs. Dark Samus, Elsa vs. Rosalina, or Percy Jackson vs. David Rain, and I'd be very surprised if anyone even knows who that last character is. Despite having 0 shot and not being very thematic at all, they're still super fun to me because I love the characters. I would love to hear more unique ideas, so if anyone wants to share their own personal matchups in the comments, I'd love to read them. Anyway, enough of that. Time to start getting into the dumb stuff. Sauron from Lord of the Rings versus Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame. These 2 wield a devastating power that threatens to consume all life, and while Sauron wields with an iron fist, Midra was cursed with this power and forced to endure the pain of concealing it. That is a really cool contrast, which is great because there's pretty much nothing else to this one. Sauron should stomp, I'm guessing, unless you want to argue the Frenzied Flame would kill both of them, but I highly doubt that would be the verdict. God, I love the look of these 2. Seeing their flames clash would be a sight to behold. Melina versus Zelda. 2 maidens from medieval fantasy worlds that guide the main protagonists and gift them with crucial golden artifacts, the spectral steed whistle and the light arrows. They are each descended from who is essentially God, Marika and the goddess Hylia, and both can utilize assassin-based weaponry and movement. Melina uses the Black Knives moveset when summoned, and Zelda can become Sheik. They also made a noble sacrifice to help the protagonist. Melina sacrificed herself to burn the Erd Tree, and Zelda went through dragonification so she could heal the Master Sword, and each are obsessed with a magic golden artifact that has the power to shape the world, the Elden Ring and the Triforce. It's not my favorite Zelda matchup by any means, but it works decently enough. Since Echoes of Wisdom is out, Zelda should easily take it, but maybe the new Elden Ring game will give Melina something to do? I'm really excited for Night Rain, by the way. I already adore the combat in Elden Ring, and the game just gives me an excuse to do more of it, so I'm obviously pretty happy. Of course, I'm more of a single-player guy, but I'm definitely going into this with an open mind and can't wait to see more of the universe. King Bulblin from Twilight Princess versus Commander Gaius. I assumed Commander Gaius would have the worst matchup here since he's by far the least deserving boss to drop a Remembrance, but compared to some other ones, it's actually not too bad. 2 boar-riding villains who command armies and have very little backstory compared to the rest of the characters in their games. It's still terrible, obviously, but for a character like Gaius, I'm pretty proud with what I came up with, which can't be said for the rest of the matchups in this video. Gaius probably wins because he has gravity magic and Bulblin doesn't. Pretty simple. The Elden Beast versus the Master Crown from the Kirby series. Now we're really starting to get into the dumb ones. 2 one-eyed powerful entities with ambiguous lore and godlike power that have a heavy association with trees. The Elden Beast guards the Erd Tree, and the Master Crown transforms into a giant tree. They also fight the real final boss of their games, Radagon and Magalore, and look really out of place in their worlds. Nobody's allowed to make fun of me unless they can come with a better matchup. Just wanted to remind everybody. Who else is Elden Beast gonna fight? Princess Celestia from My Little Pony? Master Crown should absolutely stomp unless you consider every star in Elden Beast's body to be a full galaxy or some shit. Dragonlord Placidusax versus King Ghidorah from Monsterverse. Mythical dragons with multiple heads that use lightning and shoot fire that looks like laser beams. Yeah, we still have almost 10 matchups to go and this shit is already bad. Ghidorah stomps unless you want to say that Pseudosax can freeze time and win that way, but Ghidorah probably has resistance to that too, since Monsterverse gets ridiculous. Lich Dragon Fortisax versus Alduin from Skyrim. Black dragons that represent something akin to death and utilize unique elements for dragons, frost and meteors for Alduin and lightning for Fortisax. This is probably better than the last one now that I think about it, but I don't know. I've played a lot of Skyrim but never finished it, so I don't even know what the fight is like. I'm guessing the music would go hard as hell, and after watching Dark Souls vs. Skyrim, Alduin should absolutely obliterate. Scattertree Avatar versus the Sunflower Queen from Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. Giant sunflowers that attack with light lasers and debuted in a video game. No idea who wins, possibly the funniest matchup here. Midir Mother of Fingers versus Mother Brain from Metroid. Mothers that command an army of really weird enemies, Metroids and Finger Creepers, and shoot giant lasers. They're also so ugly that if not for their names, you'd probably have no idea what they're supposed to be. I'm guessing Midir would win this one because the lore around her seems to be pretty extreme, but we will never know because nobody's dumb enough to research something like this. At least I hope not. Osmond Sadler from Resident Evil 4 versus Romina Saint of the Bud. Two bug people with spear-like weapons that utilize an element or creature that slowly eats away at their victims, Scarlet Rot and Las Plagas. This is actually really close, I think, since Sadler grows to the size of a skyscraper in the remake, and I don't see how either of them could resist the other's infection. Scarlet Rot kills way faster than Las Plagas, though. I mean, just look at how long Leon and Ashley survived it. So my bet's going on Romina. Can't wait to see this episode get announced alongside Ender Dragon vs. GLaDOS and live-action Steve vs. my left ass cheek. Leon Gar from Kirby and the Forgotten Land versus Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Two lion bosses from 3D games that seem to be possessed or something and use a bunch of different elements. They also both have really creepy looking lunging attacks where their heads almost look like they're detached from their bodies. Is this the biggest stomp in this video? It might be. Cool. Forgotten Land was great and you should go play it. Dancing Lion theme is the second best song in Elden Ring. I'm horrifically lonely. Putrescence Knight versus Hunter from Skeleton Boomerang. I looked up Skeleton Boomerang bosses to see if there was another one from a popular game, and apparently there's an indie game called Skeleton Boomerang. It looks kinda cool, actually. It's a 2D platformer where you use a boomerang and kill a bunch of skeletons. It has like 95% on Steam and over 120 reviews, so maybe it's worth checking out, who knows? Hunter's losing the fight pretty badly, so maybe you could go play it before he's joining St. Trina at the bottom of the stone coffin fissure. Epona from Zelda versus Regal Ancestor Spirit. A magical horse versus an ancient moose. This is the last Zelda matchup, I promise. Godric the Grafted versus Lord Farquaad from Shrek. Two asshole leaders who compensate for their small size by being an asshole. Also grafting in Godric's case. They also got up close and personal with a dragon during their final moments. Godric grafted one to his arm as a last-ditch effort to kill the Tarnished, and Farquaad got eaten by Donkey's girlfriend because he's short, and that's what happens when you're short, I guess. I can't believe there are two Shrek matchups in this video, but I guess that's fitting given the high fantasy setting they each have. I lied earlier, this is easily the biggest stomp. Farquaad has literally nothing. Estelle, Natural Born of the Void versus Gobblegut from Mario Galaxy 2. Giant alien creatures with balls all over their body, and they have a refight later in the game that changes literally one thing. Estelle gets one new attack and Gobblegut's on fire. Laugh all you want, you're not coming up with any better. Estelle stomps. Are we almost done yet? Thank God. Lord Frederick from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze versus the Fire Giant. Fire versus ice, last of his kind versus the leader of an army. A boss from a fire arena with ice blocks in it versus a boss from an icy arena with a cauldron of fire next to it. Hell yeah, dude. Best matchup I've ever seen. Better than Mario versus Sonic. Better than Vader versus Obito. Better than Fire Giant versus Sonic and Obito teaming up. Woo! And finally, I've saved the best for last. Here we go. Here it comes. Get ready for it. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon versus this picture of me from when I was 15. Both characters went crazy because they have shitty love lives and don't know what to do with themselves. Both are white and don't have custody of their kids. Renala because she's crazy and me because I don't have kids. This fight would be really close because while Renala takes every single stat, I've managed to beat her twice during my 2 playthroughs of Elden Ring, so I don't see why I couldn't do it again. Her only real chance is if I'm under-leveled or she tries to seduce me, but neither of those outcomes seem likely, so I'm pretty confident I got this. Make it happen, Death Battle. Cancel all your 2025 plans and give me a call so we can get to recording the live-action segments and spend the rest of your budget making her magic look as good as possible. It'll rack in the views, I promise. And that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. This was a very different type of video. I was honestly just fed up doing the Power Star tier lists. It takes a lot out of me and it's really repetitive, so I want to try something else. I hope you guys got some enjoyment out of it, and I will see you in the next one.